tell me about the planning that goes into preparing for this certification. What all is involved on your side, on the SonicWall side, in preparing for this?
That's a good question. Interestingly enough, there's little involvement from our side. And let me explain what that means. First of all, they don't share with you what kind of malware they're going to send your way. So it's very useless for you to start planning for it. You have to build and configure your environment so the way you would do for your standard customers out there. The second thing is that it's not that you send the box, they test it, and send it back to you till the next test. You send them a box, you configure it, and then you have to leave it there. It stays there for the duration of the test. They do the test, they release the result, and then the next quarter, it stays there. Next quarter, they do the same thing. So short of your regular updates that you do to your technology, you don't really go out there and play and configure anything. And if you have set it up to be automatically updated, really, beside the initial setup at the beginning of your relationship with ICSA, there's not much that you do as far as preparation goes for a test. It's automated on their side, you let them run, and they give you the result.
And that's, I think, an especially important thing to point out, because lots of things you can prepare for. I'll use the example of Cerdant's PCI level 1 service provider compliance, our annual audit. It's obviously something very important to us from a compliance and an auditing standpoint to be able to validate to the customers and customer environments that we protect that we are in fact holding ourselves to the same security standards that we are recommending to them. But at the end of the day, it is something that initially we prepare for, but really is something too that is a regular maintenance piece of things, and something that isn't like studying for a test. And I think this especially is probably one of the more unknown things when it comes to third-party industry validation, is that it's not something that everybody has a set list of what's a good word, rules of engagement, I'll say, for something like this. You're preparing for a scenario and then you do it and then you get a certain grade. It's not like that. It's really testing the efficacy and the everyday readiness of the solution and of the product for for an unknown battery of tests.
Yeah,
I think that's
it's
the
interesting
thing that really keeps it valid.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought it up, because you mentioned some of the names out there in the industry. Some of the certification companies have a dedicated or have certain areas that they concentrate on, or that's their area of expertise. Okay, some of them do certification on detection rate, some of them do it on price per performance, the throughput of the box, and so on and so forth. What ICSA does that I like is they're really measuring two contradictory areas. Okay, they're looking at your accuracy, detection rate, as well as your false positive. Now, if you were measuring one of these two, if you were doing accuracy, it was very easy for me to go and tighten my rules to make sure that I capture every malware, but more than likely that would have increased the false positive rates on my box to go skyrocket. Or I could turn around and make the rules very loose and make my false positive rates low, but then my detection rate would also go low with it. The thing with ICSA is that because they're measuring both of them at the same time, you're forced to optimize your rules to detect as many malware as possible and as little false positive as you can. And that's something that your average customer, your true customer, should be looking for. You want the highest protection with the lowest false positive possible.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the false positive piece of things, because I mean, there are a lot of F words out there in the world, but especially in the security industry, I think false positive is probably the real F word in a lot of customer environments. So that I can certainly validate from customer conversations that is massively important, because if someone is sifting through, mountains of false positives, they will a lot of times sacrifice security to avoid the workload that comes with false positives.
Absolutely.